Hey soccer fans, this is Nick with Glasshouse Soccer and the Feed the Fire podcast. We are talking all things Chicago Fire tonight because the Fire have not only extended their point streak to 3 games, but they just won their first match in 9 outings. And we couldn't be more excited for it, and we couldn't be more excited for reinvigorating the trend of tucking in your soccer jersey. Now, the Fire will have next week off, so rather than preview their game against Toronto FC on the 15th, we're going to take a look at some headlines from around the league, including a coaching move and a major player transfer, and we'll wrap the show by taking a look at the U.S. Olympic team roster for this summer's Olympic Games. Stay tuned for all this and more. Hey soccer fans, thanks again for joining me on another episode of Feed the Fire, Chicago Fire podcast. As you know, I'm your host Nick, and we have a lot to get into. I want to start with some housekeeping and messages I've received, and then we're going to talk about this great victory by the Chicago Fire. So to begin, I want to thank Dominic, Ryan, and Israel for their emails. I want to share some of the words that they have sent to me, and we can kind of talk a little bit about what's going on with the Fire based on what they're saying. So I received an email from Israel after this last match, and he says, "Great to see you on Saturday. We had a great time despite the weather. 2 things that I noticed, and maybe it's just me, or is the Fire playing so much better after Shaqiri went to Switzerland?" Now, Israel, you're absolutely right. It's not just you, and I wonder if you're just, if you really are curious or if you are kind of stating the obvious here, because, yeah, it has been well documented, both from a statistical standpoint, from a records and points standpoint, and just from a general vibe standpoint, that the team is much better off without $8 million man Xherdan Shaqiri. And you even noticed comments from Frank Klopas in his last press conference that they're like, we can only focus on what's here and this and that, and the way his tone was suggested that the team is moving on just fine without him. They're better off without him, and people were even reading into it further that Shaqiri's played his last game for the Chicago Fire, and he'll just end up staying in Switzerland. They'll buy out his contract or do whatever they can do. So, no, it's not just you, Israel. Everyone else is noticing it, and yes, the Fire are definitely better off without him. It is no coincidence that they are on a 3-game point streak and get this win against the number 2 team in the Western Conference, the LA Galaxy, when Brian Gutierrez is taking a central role and advancing the midfield, not Xherdan Shaqiri. Now, Israel goes on in his message. Also, is there a double standard on the new rule, and did it not apply to annoying Ricky Puig? To my understanding, once the player goes down and the medical staff comes in, the player needs to exit the pitch for at least 2 minutes. I noticed that they let Ricky Puig on the pitch after he went down, but they made one of the Fire players leave the pitch. I think it was Pineda. I thought the officiating was terrible, and of course the Fire get a handball on Chivas for the PK, but the Galaxy do not get one when Mitrovic comes out at the end of the match and touches the ball with his arm. So yeah, the refereeing was pretty poor. I think part of it is that the Fire play more physical, and I've talked about this in episodes past, and they've started to get a reputation, and they do have some reckless challenges early on in the game, sure, and they're starting to get a reputation, and when a referee sees the first 3, 4, 5 fouls all go against the Chicago Fire, then they know they're going to have to pull an early yellow card or make those calls to make sure the game doesn't get out of control, and that they can keep it from these kind of bad challenges and lazy challenges from turning into reckless, deliberate, and possibly tackles that would injure someone. So the Fire aren't helping themselves out on a lot of it. I cannot recall how long Ricky Puig was off the pitch. It did not seem like he was off that long. I know there are exceptions to the if you are down for 15 seconds, you have to stay off a minute. I know we saw it in this game, the goalie exception when Chris Brady went down. Goalies don't have to leave the pitch for that minute of time. They get the time they need, and the trainers get their time they need with the goalkeepers. But yeah, I really don't know what the justification was for it. I kind of looked around on some of the MLS stuff, and I haven't really seen anything. But yeah, you're absolutely right. If the medical staff does come onto the field, at the very least, that player needs to exit the field and be subbed back on. I don't know if it's 2 minutes because of the medical staff, or if it is If you're just down for over 15 seconds, then there's a minute. But I haven't seen anything released by MLS, and I'll have to go back and double check those rules. But that is something to kind of be aware of going forward. They are doing the best they can to speed up the game and prevent players from just kind of faking it. Now, the next message I want to get into was from Ryan, and he asks, now that the season is halfway through, and yep, the Fire have played half of their games. They've played 17 games already. How many goals from Cuypers would be considered a success? I feel like we were expecting him to get better service before the season started. At least I was. Well, to address your second line there, Ryan, you're absolutely right. We all expected Cuypers to be getting much better service. We expected it to come from a number of places. We expected it first and foremost to come from Shaqiri, hoping that he would finally be more fit or fully fit, not have a lot of knocks and injuries and have to worry about as much international duty, at least the first part of the season. We were expecting it to come from Chris Mueller, who was supposed to get healthy, but he's lost a step and has been relegated to a bench role for large parts of the season and in recent games as well because of his poor form. We thought it would come from Marin Haile Selassie, but he likes to shoot, as I've said, and he's been battling injuries, and he's been trying to figure out a way to work with the players around him. We thought it would come from Andrew Gutman, pushing up from that left back position out to injuries. So there are a lot of reasons why Cuypers hasn't been getting the service. Some is injuries, some is just gelling with players, and some is just terrible play by his teammates and scheming from the coaches to be a little bit more defensive than offensive. But what I would say Cuypers needs to do first and foremost is take advantage of the 2 or 3 chances he's going to get. I mean, I hate to compare myself to professional players here, but growing up playing high school soccer, club soccer, you're going to get 2, maybe 3 shots a game as an individual player. And you've got to convert at least one of those. That's what you have to do. You have to take advantage of the opportunities you're given. Now, Cuypers he's kind of making lemonade out of lemons in a lot of these instances and getting off a shot. Even though it doesn't look like a good shot, you can't be too caught up in what his shot looks like because he's getting the ball at such a bad angle or on his wrong foot or not played where he wants it to be. So he is having to make lemonade from the lemons he's being served up, but he still needs to do a better job scoring. Now, he has been on a streak. I think it's 3 goals in 3 games for him. No, it's at least 2 in 2 games. He's got 5 goals on the season, leads the team. And if you remember last season, Marin Haile Selassie led the team from the whole season with 6 goals. So if you just want him to be better than last year's leading scorer, then he's only got 2 goals to do it. But if you want Cuypers' season to be considered a success, at the beginning of the season, we were saying 20 goals. That he needs to be a 20-goal scorer considering all the service he's going to get, and Gutierrez is going to take a step forward and the defense is going to be playing balls up and bombing up the field, all that sort of thing. I think now that we're halfway through the season and he's got 5, 20 is unrealistic. I mean, who knows? Maybe he does keep scoring a goal a game, and that would be absolutely insane, and he might be up for MVP of the second half of the season, if not the whole season at that point, if the Fire somehow make a crazy run back to the playoffs. But I don't want to get too far ahead of myself here and start talking crazy. It has been a long day. It was the kids' last day of school, so we're all playing at the park with all the other families, so maybe I am just a little bit fried here talking about this, but I don't think that's going to happen. So what I think you need to do is I think if he can get to that 12-15 goal mark in the second half of the season, if the Fire can continue to improve as a team a little bit and continue to push that ball forward, work on their offensive identity a little bit, then I think that would be considered a success. 12 to 15 goals, 3 to 4 assists maybe. He had that great assist to Acosta not too long ago. Was that the DC game or the Orlando game? I'm forgetting here. It was the DC game. And maybe he does need to have that second striker, and if you can get Koutsias to actually play a little bit better and work with him a little bit better, maybe in this week off they all go have some Greek food or have some Belgian food or both and hang out and kind of work with each other on the pitch and maybe work with some of their wingers and outside backs as to how they want to work this 2-striker system. We saw it in the game against the Galaxy. Selassie was playing up top as kind of that second striker supporting Cuypers. So maybe if Koutsias can develop and Selassie can drop back to the wing and start playing some better service, that would absolutely help those numbers go up. But yeah, I think if he can get to that 12 to 15 goal range, maybe 3-4 assists, I'd consider it a success at this point in time. Now, we also got an email from Dominic, who really got into some of the data. I really appreciate all the charts that you sent here, Dominic. And it was a very long email and it was very detailed, so let me give you all the highlights here. The first highlight, a 5-3-2 setup at home against one of the worst teams in the league. The biggest problem all year long is getting service to Cuypers. Maybe a defensive 5-3-2 was the right call on the road against DC, but for goodness sake, a home game against Orlando is where you go for it, not where you park the bus. Hard to disagree with you there, and the results would bear it out. 2 draws. He also talks about the substitutions, and Dominic says, the big offseason moves, the solution to our problems of last season, Cuypers and Acosta, are pulled out in the 72nd minute of a 1-1 game. These guys are 27 and 28 respectively. This was after the Orlando game. They have 90 minutes in them, and we need it. Are we saving them for LA? Why? This game was there for the taking, and it's not like Gutierrez is a game changer. I like him a lot, but time and place. Absolutely. Absolutely. And you're right, Gutierrez hasn't proved to be a game changer or a reliable scorer or a scorer at all this season, as much as I like him too, because I love the hustle. I love how much his work rate is. I love how he's trying to get involved with Cuypers, drop back when he needs to, make those runs into the channels when he needs to, get into the corners, get into the box. Like, he's all over the place, and he just needs to hone that down a little bit. But back to your point, absolutely, why are we pulling Cuypers in a 1-1 game at home against Orlando City? I don't know. Maybe Klopas. I think Klopas is kind of big on load management, but you're going into a week off after the LA game, so you need to take the points when you can. I said it in the last episode. You need to beat Orlando to take those 3 points because you're probably not going to take them against LA. Well, guess what? Look what happened. Prove me wrong. Thanks, Fire. Though I did go on News Across the Galaxy, an LA Galaxy show on Thursday, and I did predict a Chicago Fire victory. Knowing that they had the draw in Orlando, I was like, I think the guys are feeling it. I predicted a 3-2 win. They ended up with a 2-1 win, but I'll take that as a win for myself. Dominic goes on, talking about the substitutions. Beyond the issues of who was subbed, the big question is what were they doing? I was at the game and could not figure out if we were still in a 5-3-2. If so, that means we had Salase and Gutierrez up top. That's what ESPN FC and WhoScored.com show. But looking at Salase's touches, I have no idea where he was set up. And he sends me a chart of Salase's touches, which, yeah, they are all over the place here. And I'm trying to figure out, oh yeah, that must be the defensive end. And you can see, of all of Salase's touches, he had 22 touches. Only 4 of them were in the defensive half on the center and left. But the other 18 were, if you're in the attacking half of the field, the left and center third, and then 2 were also in the right third. So yeah, Salase was playing like the attacking left quadrant of the field. Like, he was kind of all over the place. And as we'll see in the LA Galaxy game, like, he's giving Gutierrez a lot of freedom to do things. He's given Fabian Herbers a lot of freedom to do things and move around the pitch, go where they need to go. And to a certain extent, Gutierrez and Cuypers to be able to drop back and get involved in the play, but also, to stay forward at times they see fit. And this kind of all falls within the larger picture of Frank Klopas not being a very good offensive tactician, and he's just kind of relying on his guys who have the skill, so he hopes, just relying on them to be at this professional level, to have been developed as an offense and kind of figure things out themselves. As we have seen, not a very good way to approach things, and that's why when we look at the stats in the LA and the Orlando games, you're going to see that despite the results, not very good games played by the Chicago Fire. So thank you to you guys who've written in again, Dominic, Ryan, and Israel. Always great to see you, hear from you. Ryan, congrats on the move back to the region there. Hope all's going well for you, man. Also, if anyone else wants to get involved, you can get on Spotify and answer our podcast questions. You can email me, glasshousesoccer@gmail.com, or you can find me on social media at glasshousesoccer. All DMs are open. Feel free to reach out. Always great chatting with people. That's one of the most fun things about doing a show like this and being part of the Chicago Fire community is all the great people you get to meet. Speaking of great people that I got to meet, I want to let everyone know that I will be co-hosting along with Alex Campbell the next episode of CHGO Fire that is going to be live 2:30 p.m. Central, June 4th, Tuesday, June 4th. On YouTube, so make sure you go find CHGO Sports, subscribe to them, turn on the notifications, and be on the lookout for Tuesday, June 4th, the notification that CHGO Fire is going live, and you will see Alex Campbell and I talking all things Fire and MLS. He already sent me the show notes, and I can tell you it's going to be a very fun, a very good show. More so Galaxy talk than Orlando DC talk, I'll put it that way. Also, speaking of YouTube, please make sure you follow and subscribe on Glasshouse Soccer on YouTube. I think I'm going to do a special little YouTube video, maybe 10-15 minutes, going over the All-Star ballot and casting my votes. My son, my 8-year-old soccer player fanatic son, also said he wants to sit in and contribute to that episode. So, maybe we'll have another little guest in my office here, and you can hear the kid's perspective on who deserves to be an All-Star in MLS. All right, with all that fun stuff out of the way, let's jump back into the Chicago Fire's game against Orlando City. Now, I'm not going to spend too much time recapping the game. It was ugly. The Fire squeaked out that draw at home. I do want to recognize the goal they conceded. There were 9 guys in the box for 4 Orlando players. I think it was 9 and Brady maybe. And the only thing that was missing from that was the Benny Hill music in the background. As Dominic described it in an email to me, it was an absolute clown show. And it looked like it. Like the ball was... They were just trying to boot it and clear it or dink it and dunk it, and it ended up bouncing off their own players half the time. And Facundo Torres, who I had mentioned in a prior episode, I'm like, he's going to get one against the Fire. He plays well against the Fire. Well, he just pounced on the loose ball in the box, poked it in, kind of dribbled in. I don't think Brady got a good look at it when you got 9 guys in front of you. And again, the defense just leaving their keeper out to dry. So I don't want to get into that too much, but here were the stats from the Orlando City match. Possession was in favor of the Chicago Fire, about 52 to 48%. Fire ended up with 18 shots, but again, only 2 on goal. So they're generating shots, but not quality opportunities, or they're just bombing stuff and trying to make something happen. The defense ended up blocking 5 shots, 479 total passes at 83% passing accuracy. So not a terrible passing game for them. And considering they had 52% of the possession, you can see why they had a higher passing number than usual. 6 corners, so they finished the Frank. Everybody gets a free hot dog. 14 total crosses, so they really were trying to feed that ball into Cuypers. 3 offsides, which I am okay with 3 or 4 offsides a match. Anything more than that, you got to kind of look at how your strikers are playing or why your midfielders are holding onto the ball too long. But I'm okay with 3 or 4 offsides. It means they're trying to stretch the line or they're trying to thread stuff through. They won 14 aerial duels to Orlando's 12, only 1.5 xG. So you've got 18 shots, but you're only expected to generate 1.5 goals. So that means your expected goals was less than 0.1 per shot. So each of your shots, on average, had less than a 10% chance of going in. So not quality goals by the Fire there, or quality opportunities by the Fire. Brady was credited with 1 save. The defense had 4 clearances, 14 fouls, and 3 yellow cards. So that is the stats breakdown of the Fire Orlando game. If you want to look at the possession charts, it was kind of a back and forth affair, especially in the second half. Orlando kind of controlled the first half. The Fire kind of controlled the second half. So that is the Orlando matchup. You'll hear more about that in John Donovan's segment at our halftime break. Now, we're going to transition to the big win. The most fun part. The Chicago Fire versus the LA Galaxy. The victory, the 2-1 win. The stars aligned for this game against the Galaxy. Everything worked out. I want to share some of my experiences going to the match, and then we'll take a look at some of the things that happened during the game as well. And John Donovan is going to fill us in with some Galaxy talk as well. So pregame, went with 3 of my cousins. We had a great time. We were pre-gaming out in the South lot. If anyone's out there and wants to write in or answer the Spotify question, what is your go-to tailgate beer? because my cousin brought Blue Moon, and like I find Blue Moon an enjoyable beer to, sit and sip at a pub. I wouldn't have really called it a tailgate beer. I don't know if you need like a Miller Lite or a Bud Light or to just kind of down those pilsners at the tailgates, or what you're thinking, or if you guys are just doing shots of Malort. I don't know. But yeah, what's your tailgate beer? What's your tailgate drink? I'd like to know, and then I'll make sure I pick up some. I had a great time just hanging out, catching up with them. The rain did kind of dampen the full tailgate atmosphere. Not as many people out with the supporter section tailgate group, but kudos to the Revolution Brewery folks. They had a couple of theirs reps out slinging cold beers, handing out swag and koozies and stickers and things, so it was great to have a drink with them. Also, what I really enjoyed is, and I think they've started doing this more and more now as the weather's getting better with the fire here in Chicago, right outside the South season ticket holders entrance on the south side of the stadium, there's kind of that open field that they have turned into almost a little kind of pregame park. Now, I don't know if it was just for Pride Night or if it was something they're going to continue, but they actually had a little stage. There was a DJ who was playing music. There were some dancers. It would be awesome to kind of keep that little kind of mini concert atmosphere going on for future home games. But then you had the Continental Tire booth that was set up there. They're one of the major sponsors of MLS. And I was able to snag myself a Continental Tire Chicago Fire scarf here. Very cool. And it's actually custom for the team, even though they are a league sponsor. So along the whole edge of the scarf, it says Tradition, Honor, Passion. It's got the Chicago Fire logos, Continental Tire colors, Chicago Fire colors. It was a cool little giveaway, and I'm happy to add it to my collection. And they were also even giving away the game day giveaway. So they had the Pride Night little satchels that were also being handed out at this little kind of pregame party, along with other games like soccer darts, where you're kicking like light balloon type soccer balls against a giant Velcro dartboard. Some other little soccer drill games and swag booths and things that were going on. So it was cool because it kind of helps with the crowd control. There's not as many people playing the games inside. You're getting a lot of the swags and stuff outside. The only thing is make sure you got a bag to carry it in, a nice clear plastic bag that will get you through security. So I was a big fan of that. On the way in, I ran into one of the ticket account managers, one of the premium sales account managers, and we were chatting a little bit. I remember him from the preseason meet and greet with Gutierrez and Brady out in Naperville, and I was like, hey, so you're the one that talked me into buying these season tickets. How are you doing? And we got to catch up, and he said they had sold about 30,000 tickets that night, and sure enough, the announced attendance was 25,237. So you got to figure you're going to lose a little bit of people to the rain if anyone was bringing family, what have you. But you could feel that the crowd was bigger and louder. And you know what? The average attendance for the Chicago Fire is going up. And maybe that's why you're starting to see some of the season ticket prices and other ticket prices go up for next season. I'm going to get into that a little bit in the next episode, because the joke was that they released their season ticket renewals on the day when the Fire played Orlando and gave up that goofy goal in the 4th minute, and it was just bad optics. But I will go through, because they've made some changes and they've added some cool kind of incentive features. So I'm going to, and maybe some tiers. Like I saw something where it's like a family season ticket holder tier and a corporate season ticket holder tier, and all these different kind of customizable or redemption or rewards things. Fire 365 they're calling it. So I'm gonna get the details on that, and I'll kind of hash it out a little bit next weekend as well, and maybe I can have a little therapy session with everyone here on the air and decide whether or not I want to renew my season tickets. But we'll do that in the future. The other thing that was really, really fun, just other than a better atmosphere, and I think kind of people got amped because it was the rain. You're kind of like laughing and putting up with it and like energized about it. I think that was a little bit more fun. But also, the best part about the game, other than the win and the goals and everything, booing Ricky Pooch every opportunity you could. He ended up taking that penalty shot early on in the match, in the 7th minute, I believe, because of the Rafa Chijos handball. And as terrible as it looked at the game, and I'm sure it looked really bad on first blush, watching it live at home, I think it was the right call. And it was VAR went to it really quick. They didn't even wait for a stoppage in play. They just waited for the Galaxy to kind of play the ball back and reset and finish their attacking, what do they call it, attacking action, even though they still had the ball and it was live on the field. Like, they stopped it really quick, so they absolutely saw something there. And unfortunately, it did get called, and Puig takes the PK and scores it. Brady goes the right way, but Puig blasts it, and even if he knew where he was going to go, there's no chance in him saving it. So there was that. And the fans did kind of boo Puig a little bit, but not the full stadium boos that we heard after he draws a foul from Mauricio Pineda, who picks up a yellow card in the 29th minute. And at that point, the fans, every time Puig touched the ball, was just raining boos down upon him. It was so much fun. I even had a conversation with someone on Twitter who's like, we need to do this every single game. Who can we talk to? Who do we need? Can we get the supporters section involved? Pick a player on the opposing team every match and just start booing them every time they touch the ball. It was phenomenal. Now, let's go in and kind of take a look at some of the stats and the lineup and some of the other things that were going on in this matchup between the Fire and the Galaxy, because there were a few questions that people had here, and head scratching moments as well. So for your starting lineup, you had Chris Brady in goal, left to right along the back, Jonathan Dean getting the start, Rafa Chihos. Oh my gosh, I just remembered. I gotta tell you guys a quick story. So Jonathan Dean gets the start at left back, right? Andrew Gutman's out, Chase Gasper's out. So as I'm walking around the concourse with my cousins before the game, we're walking around. We're on the lake side of the stadium, the east side of the stadium, on the concourse, and I look, and there's this really tall, fit, bald dude with crutches and like a few people around him just chatting in the middle of the concourse. I'm like, guys, that's Chase Gasper. And my cousins are like, who? We don't like. They're big sports fans, not dedicated Chicago Fire fans. So like, that's their injured backup left back. Like, I wonder what he's doing walking around the concourse. And they're like, go talk to him. Go talk to him. Like, he's injured. He's like clearly got family and people around him. I don't want to go up and interrupt him. Okay, fine, whatever. But it was kind of funny to see him wandering around the concourse. After the game, we're exiting through the United Club. And as we are at the very south end of the United Club, right before you go out the doors to go down the stairs, there's Chase Gasper, crutches and all, with who I'm assuming is his significant other, and just locking lips and making out, celebrating the victory in his own way. It was a little sloppy. It was a little awkward as we were walking past it, and I'm just like, guys, there's that player again. And we were just laughing. We were trying to like not look, but like, how could you not? It was one of those kind of make-out sessions, right? But good for Chase Gasper, good for the team, celebrating the win. Okay, anyway, back to the lineups here. Brady in goal, Jonathan Dean left back, Chihos and Turan center backs, and Alan Aragoni on the right after missing that Orlando game with yellow card accumulation, I believe. Kellen Acosta, Mauricio Pineda starting as your D-mids. Fabian Herbers, Brian Gutierrez, Martin Haile Selassie as your attacking mids, and Hugo Cuypers as your striker. So the MLS website has this as a 4-2-3-1 formation. Did we see it as a more 4-4-2 kind of formation? Selassie was kind of pushing up a little bit more to begin with, giving Gutierrez a lot more space to operate, and Herbers a lot more space to operate. So those are the kind of things that you can put something on paper, but with the Frank Klopas team, what the shape is when they're playing offense is anyone's guess. Now, we did notice there were some interesting substitutions here. Let me get to my notes on the subs here. Suquet came in for Pineda at halftime, and I thought this was a smart move, given that Mauricio Pineda was already on a yellow, and that he was going to be put in, he and the rest of the defense were going to be put in compromising positions at some point. And at some point you were going to have to take a tactical yellow, and you don't want that choice to have to be on Pineda to take the red card or to allow a counterattacking and goal-scoring opportunity. So I think this was a smart move, getting Pineda out. Suquet has actually looked okay in the last couple of games. So for him to come in and for Pineda, probably a smart move. Now, we also saw Tom Barlow come in for Hugo Cuypers. And this is where you kind of scratch your head a little bit. This was in the 66th minute, and it kind of gets back to Dominic's point. Like, why are you subbing out your star striker? I guess in Klopas's head, you're up 2-1. You need Barlow to press that defense. That's why they signed him. He's the guy that's going to come in and see out games and keep pressing the defense and not allow opponents to build from the back or build up an attacking sequence. But it was so obvious a thing. It's like you're not even looking at how Cuypers is playing. Is he still playing well? Is he still able to receive the ball? Can he shoot? Is he running? Whatever. It was just like Gutierrez scores, they go up, Barlow's up and warming up. 5 minutes after the goal, he goes in. So that's what I don't like. I don't like scripted subs like that, or when there's a sequence that you're going to play a guy, well, when this happens, we're going to get in, or at this minute, we got to start our subs. I don't like that. I don't think it means you're reading. It doesn't mean you're stuttering here. Told you I'm a little fried. It means the coaching staff is not reading the game, that they're reacting to the game instead of being proactive. Not a fan of it. Also in the 76th minute, you saw Jimenez and Koutsias come in for Kellen Acosta and Marin Haile Selassie. So again, could Acosta go and help see out that game, or did they just want to put fresh legs in the middle and kind of clog things up and prevent Pooch from making those trademark runs where he's just barreling past midfielders and running at defenders? So that one I'll kind of say, okay, fine, I guess I can understand it. Though when Jimenez came in, my cousins are like, what is it, Nick? I'm like, what are we talking about? They're like, you said uh-oh very loudly when they announced that substitution. And I was like, oh, that was out loud? Like, Jimenez comes in and I go, oh no, uh-oh. Like, it's just a gut reaction, I suppose. So their objective in this game was stifle Pooch, kill off the game. Thankfully they did it. You know, I'm not giving them a grade. It was pass-fail. They passed. We won the game. And then you see Mueller come in for Gutierrez in the 85th. I'm fine with this sub. He gets some fresh legs in the match to kind of kill things off, to chase some of those balls down in the corner. Again, to keep the pressure up on the opposition, to chase down any sort of counterattacks. And you know what? Guti gets his ovation as well in the 85th minute. So that's kind of my criticism, or at least my notes and comments on the subs. I'm not sure what else you could do differently when you've got a lot of injuries and when you're in this type of situation. But the main thing to take away from all of this is that we got Koutsias in the match with a tucked-in shirt. And at this point, I'm going to pivot a bit and tell the story of the shirt tuck. And if you haven't seen it all going on social media, you are missing out one of the most fun storylines of the entire season of the Chicago Fire here. And I will run through this, and then we'll blur through the stats and get into our second half of the show here. So, on Twitter, user Anthony_CF97, who goes by the name Koutsias #1 fan, he posted a thread before the game detailing how when Giorgos Koutsias, who, if you remember, when he came to the club, had his shirt tucked in that whole first season he was playing, Koutsias actually untucked his shirt on August 20th of last year, and the Fire lost that game and went on a 6-game losing streak, and that time only having like 4 wins since then as well. It was like 4 wins, 8 losses, 15 draws, something like that, but only 4 wins since Koutsias untucked his shirt. So Anthony then tries emailing. He looked up, he did his internet Google detective work, found an email address for Giorgos Koutsias, and emailed him his findings and told him to tuck his shirt back in, but the email bounced back. Not to be deterred, good job, Anthony, stick with it, he found Kellen Acosta on a social media platform and sent him a message with his research and said, you need to tell Koutsias to tuck this t-shirt in. Kellen Acosta replies to Anthony with a saluting emoji that says, I'll get right on it. Koutsias enters the game in the 76th minute, shirt tucked in. Everyone's going nuts in the stands. I later go back on social media. All the media groups, Men in Red 97, On Tap, Sportsnet, anyone who's covering the game is noticing, like, Koutsias is in with his shirt tucked in, tweeting it out. Post-game, Alex Calabrese of Men in Red 97 goes to Giorgos Koutsias and says, hey, by the way, we noticed your shirt was tucked in. Can you tell us about that? Koutsias starts laughing and says, yeah, Kellen Acosta told me I had to tuck it in before the game. So the whole thing comes full circle. Whatever superstitions are out there, and if you buy into it or not, we got to be tucking shirts in. Like, I would love for the whole team to come out with tucked shirts, even just to start that way. You can untuck it when they blow the whistle if you want, but just to start that way and kind of give a nod to it would be phenomenal. I end up tagging Rudy Hodgson, their director of communications, saying, you need to put this in your next keys to the match, that Giorgos Giakoumakis has to come in with a shirt tucked in, which after that, somehow the Fire organization gets wind of it. They're giving Anthony a signed Giakoumakis jersey and tickets, and supposedly the Chicago Fire organization is going to put out apparel that says, tuck in your friggin' shirt. And I think we all have to buy one. That's the story of Giorgos Giakoumakis and the tucked-in shirt for the Galaxy match. Now, looking at the statistics here, it was not a good statistical game, and even from the eye test, it wasn't the best game, but the Fire finally made the most of the few opportunities, the few quality opportunities that they had, and Brady came up big. So here's the stats. 42% possession, 11 shots, 4 on goal. Defense had 1 block shot. 410 total passes with a passing accuracy of 86%. 2 things to compare that passing number to. According to the detailed passing breakdown, the passing, let me see here, overall 86%. Open play passing 88%, so not a lot of play from restarts and dead balls. But the Chicago Fire crossing only had a 33% passing rate. So you're not seeing it brought down by some of these long balls or some of these forward progression balls into the attacking third. You're seeing them play a very controlled, possessing game in the middle third, passing the ball around the defense, especially not in any sort of particular hurry to do anything with the ball. So those kind of passing numbers kind of suggest that you really need to go find heat maps and touch charts and things like that from players to see why the ball's not moving forward or where they're not getting it. The other thing, let's compare it to the Galaxy now. The Galaxy had 716 total passes compared to the 410 from the Fire, and they have a 92% passing accuracy. So there was not a lot of defense in this game, at least in the fact of high lines of confrontation or stepping in, man marking players. It was very zonal, very keep them out of dangerous areas played by both teams. So that is an insane statistic to me, that the Galaxy completed 92% of their 716 passes in this game. Wild. And yet they only ended up with 58%. I would have expected a lot more. Anyway, the Fire had 2 corners, did not finish the fray. No free hot dog from Portillo. That sad moment from the game, for sure. Total crosses were 6. They only won 8 aerial duels compared to 12 by the Galaxy. I think if Cuypers is in a little bit more and if you are kind of pressing things forward a little bit, you win a few more aerial duels. He's good at it. Expected goals, only 0.9 by the Fire. So in this case, you have 11 shots, 0.9. So again, you're back down to that less than 10% average, assumed average scoring chance per each shot. So again, the Fire, but in this time they converted 2 of them. And that Gutierrez goal, as people said, the double doink finally goes in our favor. And it was on the same side. It was on the north end zone as well as that infamous double doink against the Eagles that the Bears had in the playoffs. Still too soon, as people were saying. Still too soon to talk about. But this time the double doink goes the right way, and Gutierrez with a brilliant play to intercept that pass, just to take it and be assertive. Now, if he's playing with Shaqiri, he is looking to play that ball to Shaqiri immediately. But he is not playing with Shaqiri, and he has been given the keys to the car to drive the Chicago Fire offense, and he took full advantage of it. Brady's credited with 3 saves, a couple great ones late. 13 clearances by the defense, a lot of those coming late just to eat up time. 16 fouls, 3 yellow cards, as opposed to 6 fouls by the Galaxy and 2 yellow cards. So again, that gets back to the officiating where, yeah, there were a lot of early calls against the Fire, but to have it be almost 3 times as many fouls against the Chicago Fire than the Galaxy, I think you might want to look at the official on that one. All right, we said it was a 0.9 XG for the Fire, and the Fire only had the majority of possession in 5 5-minute intervals. So not a lot of sustained possession by the Fire, but I will say they controlled the 5-minute interval at the beginning of each half, and I guess that has to say something. All right, let me check my notes here. Yeah, so the stats, again, they weren't great despite the result, and I'm not going to rain on anyone's parade, but don't think that this was some sort of great performance by the Fire. It was a great win, but not a great performance. They're lucky to have the weekend off to get right and get ready for a difficult road stretch consisting of 3 straight road games at Toronto, at Orlando, and at Seattle. So these aren't even just Midwest road games. They are going all over the continent here for this one. They got a lot of work to do to even be considered a playoff team, but for the Fire, maybe having to take it one game at a time is exactly what this team needs, and maybe take it one tucked-in shirt at a time. So with that, let's take our water break here. Let's recognize our sponsor, Skira Icelandic Spring Water. Icelandic for clear, Skira water comes from a spring in a government-protected nature preserve in Iceland with naturally low mineral content. This isn't your average water. Clearly, pun intended, it's one of the best. And you can pick up a bottle or 3 of Skira at your local 7-Eleven, and I greatly encourage you to do so as the weather heats up here in Chicago as well as around the country. And also at this time, I'd like to introduce our featured guest, John Donovan, with all his thoughts on the Fire's last couple of matches. John, take it away.
Nick, John Donovan here talking about the MLS and the winning Chicago Fire. Boy, does that sound good to say. They tied DC 1-1 on Wednesday evening, and Saturday evening against the really dangerous LA Galaxy, they came away with a 2-1 win. It just was a very good time. I hope and pray Klopas goes through seasons. I've been following this man for a long time. He will have a spurt where he'll win a few games and it looks exciting, and then suddenly somebody's hurt or whatever, and we go into a slump towards the end. So let's just hope that we don't suffer that indignity of losing again or going back into that slide. We have a lot of room to gain. We're good 2 games out of the playoff spots, which obviously is everybody's goal. But the games itself, I mean, the man of the game for Chicago on Wednesday evening was Acosta. He had just a beautiful shot that caught everybody by surprise, and that was a great tie. I mean, that kind of set the mood. Cuypers played very well that game. Shaqiri was in for a little bit that game and was out. He obviously is a guy that probably shouldn't be part of the team right now. Gutierrez had a good game, especially when he started in that position. He's really quite a good player. I thought the players of the game for that particular game, the DC game, was Terran. Gutierrez was really good. And Dean, I like Dean when he came in that game. I thought he's really got potential. This guy, I know that we signed a wing fullback in Gutman, but literally, Dean, you got to take a look at him. He's very steady. He's got good speed. I was watching him race down the sidelines with these really fast LA Galaxy guys, and he was step by step. They were not going to outrun him. It was a really nice game. I started to look at a couple of salaries that as the game was going on, and it's just amazing that the Fire are way at the top of the salary list. I mean, Shaqiri makes $141,000 a game. I mean, that's unbelievable. Suket, he makes $679,000 a year, and Federico Navarro, this is a disgrace in signing. He makes over $500,000 to get cards on the field. I mean, I just am stymied by why Joe Mansueto signed Heinz back for 3 years, because these salaries, and I guess when you've got that kind of bread or that kind of money, it just doesn't matter. But the MLS is no longer a retirement league. It's It's a league for young, good players based on the salaries. So the Fire tied 1-1 with DC. It was a good game. It really was. I thought Brady had a great game. There was a lot of back and forth, but it's still during that game, it reminded me of the lack of movement that on Klopas's teams on that forward side. There's a reason we're only scoring 1-2 goals a game. We've got a scoring guy up front in Cuypers, but the ball sits back at that fullback line, and we don't have clear flow into like our center midfielder, which is so important to the whole integrity of an offense in soccer. When Shaqiri's around, it just is not available. You'll see most of the fullbacks looking to the forward lines to clear out, where you'll look at the clear out of, say, DC or even LA, it's smooth. They know to bring it on the outside. They bring it back in the center, and it's moving forward, and they kick it. They just have a nice system. And if there's one thing the Fire should be working on in this FIFA break that they're going into, it should be breakouts, because that is something that really is stymieing the growth of the Chicago Fire. So we went into that LA game, and I think everybody that follows the MLS expected this to be a loss on the Chicago Fire calendar. I certainly did. But we had some marvelous play in this game, and again, I think Tehran just neutralized that offense. When this guy's on, he's a handful. But we had something else in that LA game that really sparked the team, and it was Gutierrez. He had a wonderful shot, a goal scored, but he played the position, that most important position on the field, that number 10 position. He played it better than anybody's played in Chicago Fire uniform in a long time. He drew the defense had the option of coming to Gutierrez, and he kicks out to a wing, or he goes straight in and shoots like he did and scored against LA. Both defenders were marking a center forward, Cuypers, and they had somebody off with the other forward, and he saw that he had that middle and nobody was closing down on him, and he just drilled it. And that's what a center midfielder's got to do. If Klopas comes back, if he's still the coach after this terrible first half of the season, that's the way he should play. It's soccer suicide to be playing a wing at center midfielder, as they've been doing with Shaqiri for a long time. But that last game, the LA game, was just really a joyous game to watch. I thought that, and I don't compliment Klopas too often, but I thought his substitution was at the right time. I didn't agree totally with all his substitutes. Cuypers, you needed him out to score, but Klopas in that last 10 minutes or 15 minutes of the game, I don't agree with this. At a 2-1, you're up by a goal and you give up your offense and squat back into a defense positioning, which is what Klopas did in that second half. After he got that goal, you would have thought the offensive side didn't exist. They were sucked into their defensive positioning on their side of the ball. But it was a win. I think most of the players played extremely well. It was a game where two youngsters came out and really took it to the other side, and those two would be Tehran and Gutierrez. They really have a wonderful future in the sport. I would suspect that European teams are looking at Tehran right now. Gutierrez, I think he has a while to go before. This and maybe the last game were really outstanding games for him. And I think he's going to have to do that a couple of times before Europe comes over and starts noticing him. But at least he's getting a spot at the position that he's trained in. So Fire are still way down there in the league. They're second from last, where they've been for centuries, it seems. Since Klopas has been involved with the team, they've been down there. But I hope and pray. Klopas always has a hot streak in the middle of his season, and then the team dies. So hopefully he can keep this team charged up to win. most of these guys are a couple of year pros. There are no rookie pros out there. So they should know that this is their job, this is their future. They've got to play hard. So thank you very much, Nick, for this opportunity. And Mike, I hope you're listening. Take care.
John, thanks as always for your contributions, for being a part of the show, for supporting everything we do here at Feed the Fire. Really appreciate all your commentary and feedback on this one. Also, I wanted to point out I had a conversation with John over text. If you guys also follow some of the local Chicago soccer teams, like the Chicago House, you'll know that's where CJ Brown was coaching before he came into the Fire. You'll know that currently the House are having a great season, and head coach Matt Poland, it was just announced that he would be departing Chicago House for a professional coaching position. And, you know, the Chicago House, also founded by Peter Wilt, their whole goal is to get amateur players professional contracts. So they are doing that with their coaching staff as well as their players, and they've been very successful in doing so with their players, whether they're placing them in MLS, overseas, USL, or other pro leagues. So kudos to the House. Congrats to Matt Poland for his new promotion. But John has a connection with Matt and reached out and said, hey, so Matt Poland has announced that he's getting a new pro job, and he's very well known around Chicago, and the Chicago Fire are off for a couple weeks here. Are we connecting dots here? Is Matt Poland coming into the Chicago Fire? And that was quickly squashed. I don't think anyone took that too seriously, but it got you thinking. This would have been the week to get rid of Klopas had all of a sudden they not had a 3-game point streak or a big win against LA. But that was out there in at least in rumor form, and John was able to kind of confirm to me, no, that is not the case. Matt Poland still will be coaching a couple of more games with Chicago House before they officially announce his new team. So just something to keep a lookout for from a Chicago greater Chicago soccer coaching standpoint and team standpoint. As I mentioned, the Chicago Fire have got 3 home games after this weekend off. But this Saturday, June 8th, you're going to see a lot of teams that are off, and thankfully so. There were a lot of 3-game weeks for teams, or Saturday, Wednesday, Saturday games. So this Saturday, June 8th, only 4 games. New England hosts the Red Bulls. Kansas City hosts Seattle. Minnesota takes on FC Dallas, and St. Louis welcomes Portland to the Arch City, so the Gateway City. So only 4 games this weekend. First one kicks off at 6:30 Central. The others are all at 7:30 Central. So just to note for your calendar. Now let's talk a little league headlines here, because there's a couple big ones. Last week we pointed out the rumor of Giakoumakis, the Atlanta United striker, going to Chivas, that they had actually made an offer. Now it is being reported that Giakoumakis has accepted the Chivas offer, but are waiting, and now they're just waiting for Atlanta United as a club to accept the terms. Now I was messaging with some of the guys over at Scarves and Spikes, the Atlanta United show. If you want good commentary on the Five Stripes, go find Scarves and Stripes, subscribe to them on YouTube, find them on wherever you get your podcasts, but also just good banter across the league as well. They have been saying that this has only been a matter of time before Giakoumakis, this deal gets done, and Giakoumakis was on the way out. Garth Lagerwey, Atlanta's CEO, said, when this all came out, he made a comment that he wants players who want to be here. So people were saying, like, oh, Giakoumakis got a bad attitude, and we've noticed that on the field. You've seen his body language. Giakoumakis also supposedly wanted more money, and Atlanta was not going to pay for that for an often injured striker who, I'll say, that's what the guys from Scarves and Stripes said, or Scarves and Spikes said, and I'll say also, someone who's not scoring. He's just not proven to be scoring this year, so why would they give him more money, an extension, additional, whatever. So that's what's going on with Giakoumakis. It's likely that he'll be transferred to Chivas within the next week or two. But also with Atlanta United, they have parted ways with head coach Gonzalo Pineda. Here's the announcement on MLSsoccer.com that was put out. Atlanta United have parted ways with head coach Gonzalo Pineda, the club announced Monday. Pineda joined Atlanta in August 2021 as a first-time manager after being an assistant coach for the Seattle Sounders. He went 38 wins, 40 losses, 29 draws, so about 500 across all competitions, qualifying for the Audi MLS Cup playoffs in 2 of 3 seasons. Assistant coach Rob Valentino takes over as interim coach. And from what I'm hearing from the guys from Scarves and Spikes, is that Valentino will be allowed to coach the team through the end of the season. Additionally, assistant coaches Diego De La Torre and Eugenio Villazon have departed the club. Goalkeeper coach Liam Curran remains in his current role. Quote, "We are grateful to Gonzalo for his commitment and dedication to the club over the last 4 seasons. He has been an exemplary ambassador for the organization, and we want to thank him for his contributions to the club." End quote, Atlanta United CEO and President Garth Lagerwey said in a release. Garth Lagerwey continues, "We made this decision in an effort to move the team in a new direction as we continue to evaluate all aspects of our sporting operation. Rob will have our full support to turn our season around in the second half." End quote. So this is interesting because on the one hand, Atlanta United, they're a little bit of a victim of their own success, winning the MLS Cup in their second season, having players like Miguel Almiron, Joseph Martinez, Leandro Gonzalo Pires, Thiago Almada, such guys, and Giakoumakis from last season, who was near the top of the Golden Boot race all season, and just not being able to win it. Having gone through culture shifts and tactical shifts and style shifts and management shifts with coaches and office executives, and now you've got Garth Lagerwey who came in during the offseason, and now he's had time to evaluate things. He's seeing how things work, and he is making changes. Now, it was easy for him to make a change because Atlanta United is in their longest, or I should say their worst stretch of form in club history. Again, they joined the league in 2017. So, since beating the Chicago Fire in Atlanta on March 31st, Atlanta United has 1 win, 4 draws, and 6 losses. Again, one of their worst stretches in club history. To be fair, they did win 2 U.S. Open Cup matches in that time. They beat Charlotte Independence 3-0, and they played New Mexico, and won in a PK shootout. So they did advance in the U.S. Open Cup, but not doing what they need to on the pitch. So Atlanta United is without a striker, probably, and without a full-time manager, and it wouldn't surprise me if Lagerwey takes this window as well to get that Giakoumakis money to transfer Thiago Almada and maybe Caleb Wiley, and then just rebuild this roster top to bottom. Also in MLS news, San Diego FC, the newest MLS expansion side, is close to signing their big star, their first star here, Mexico international Irving Chucky, or Chucky, depending on your accent and who's saying it, Lozano. So that is going to be a big move, a big draw. So still a player with a lot to offer from a soccer playing standpoint, from a performance standpoint, and it kind of pains me to say that as a USMNT fan, but also just a huge marketing move by San Diego to bring in one of the biggest stars from Mexico. The last thing I wanted to wrap us up on, and yes, this was a very front half of the episode heavy, front half heavy episode. Yeah, sure, front half heavy episode. Anyway, again, I told you I'm fried, but I want to go over the USMNT's Olympic team roster here, because we all know as Chicago Fire fans 2 major omissions in Chris Brady and Brian Gutierrez. And I don't know if that's as a result of the bad precedent the club sent a couple years back, not releasing them for international duty, or last season releasing them for international duty for some youth tournaments, World Cup qualifiers, things like that, or Olympic qualifiers. Or if they really didn't think that Brady and Gutierrez fit in with the squad or are part of the future of the U.S. national team. We all know that Gutierrez has said, look, if Mexico calls, I'll pick up the phone. No one's called him, so he's waiting to hear from either side. Chris Brady, on the other hand, he should be in the mix. Interesting decision for the U.S. men's Olympic squad to only take 2 goalkeepers. Usually there are 3, and you kind of trim it down to 2 if you want to go 2 for the actual tournament. But the goalkeepers are Patrick Schulte of the Columbus Crew and Gaga Slonina, currently of Chelsea, but formerly of our Chicago Fire. So it's kind of hard to argue with Schulte and Slonina being selected for the Olympic squad. And reminder for the Olympic squad, it is your U23 eligible players, and you are allowed. I remember you being allowed 3 players over the age limit, but in the United States, in this camp, it was only brought in 1 player over the age limit, and that's defender Walker Zimmerman. So again, Schulte and Slonina in goal. Defenders, Nathan Harriel of the Union, Jalen Neal of the Galaxy, Brian Reynolds of KVC Westerlo in Belgium, John Tolkien of the Red Bulls, Jonathan Tompkinson of Norwich City, Caleb Wiley, Atlanta United, and Walker Zimmerman, Nashville. So a good mix of international and domestic players on the back line there. Walker Zimmerman, I don't know how much they're actually going to be playing him in the Olympics, but he is definitely there as the senior presence, the guy who can kind of guide the team. Similarly, Brian Reynolds has a little bit of experience on the international level. John Token, Caleb Wiley, those are kind of the guys that I think would be starting. Nathan Harriel, but these are all quality U23 defenders here. Now in the midfield, they brought 7 midfielders: Cole Bassett of the Rapids, Gianluca Busio of Venezia over in Italy, formerly Kansas City, Benjamin Cramashi, Inter Miami, Jack McGlynn, Philadelphia Union, Aiden Morris, Columbus Crew, Rukas Pukstas of Hajduk Split in Croatia, and Tanner Tessman, Venezia, Italy, formerly of Tanner Tessman. Was he Dallas LAFC, formerly of the MLS? What I would expect to see Busio, Morris, Pukstas, and Tessman is kind of your front runners here, but is there much of a difference between, say, Cole Bassett, Jack McGlynn, Aiden Morris, Ben Cramashi? We'll see how Cramashi actually plays without someone named Leo Messi passing him the ball. But I think this is, again, another core of solid MLS quality, kind of higher end MLS quality, if you will. Maybe not top end MLS midfielders. Obviously, we're not getting any sort of the big names. But these are guys who I look at, say, from Brian Gutierrez's perspective. I think Gutierrez could easily start ahead of Cramashi and Bassett, possibly McGlynn. I just haven't watched enough of Busio and Tessman overseas, or Roxas Pukstas. A lot of people are saying that he's going to break into the senior U.S. men's team not too long. So it'll be interesting to see how he performs with the Olympic team. But I think Gutierrez would have fit very, very well in this group and had a shot to start for this group in the midfield had he been called in. Maybe it's just the fact that the Fire play him on the wing and we know he's better in the midfield. For the forwards, there are 9 forwards that were called in: Paxton Aronson, Eintracht Frankfurt; Esmir Baraktarovic of the Revolution here in New England; Taylor Booth of Utrecht in the Netherlands; Cade Cowell, Chivas Guadalajara, formerly San Jose; Damian Downs of Köln in Germany; Johan Gomez, Eintracht Braunschweig. I think I pronounced that right. Originally from Texas, though. Duncan McGuire, Orlando City; Kevin Paredes, Wolfsburg; and Griffin Yao, KVC Westerlo in Belgium. So those are your strikers. Because I have not watched enough of these other players, I mean, I've got to just give it to, if it were me starting it, like the name recognition to me would be kind of Duncan McGuire and Paxton Aronson, just knowing how McGuire plays with Orlando. Kevin Paredes has experience on the international level. Taylor Booth also, Baraktarovic. I don't know how much international experience he has, if any, or if this is kind of his first taste of it, but he is projected to fight for a starting spot, I think, on this Olympic team. I'm not as confident in these forwards, mostly because I don't watch a lot of the German league to know their potential, and knowing Cade Cowell probably did take a step up going to play for Chivas Guadalajara, but we know his shortcomings are in that final touch, that finishing touch. And for a forward, you got to have it. He's great at taking on guys one-on-one. He's big, he's strong, he's fast. But when he gets past that defender, that decision to shoot or pass or to find the back of the net had kind of been eluding him and holding him back a bit. So that's what is going on with the USMNT Olympic camp. Let's see. if there's any other notes, it says the roster features players from 21 different clubs, including 10 from MLS, 2 players each from the Crew and the Union. Let's see, 13 players are based in Germany, or 13 are based abroad. 4 in Germany, Belgium, Italy, 2 in England, Croatia, Netherlands, and Mexico. Or I should say 2 in Belgium, Italy, and England. All right, there we go. That is the announcement from the men's Olympic team. And with that, we will go ahead and wrap up the episode here. Remember, subscribe on YouTube for our upcoming MLS All-Star Vote video. Also, go find CHGO Fire on the CHGO Sports YouTube channel, and you can see me. Go find the replay if you're not going to watch it live. If you're just listening to this podcast after Tuesday afternoon, make sure that you go back and listen to it. It'll be a really fun show. Thanks to everyone who continues to write in, who wants to write in, who's reaching out, who sees me out in the stands and in the tailgate. It's been a lot of fun. Again, if you could, share the show, leave a review. I really appreciate it. And as always, let's go Fire.